I never imagined that the person who would destroy my peace wasn't a stranger, or even my wife, but someone much closer than I ever expected. Her friend. You know, the one who always smiled a little too much when I entered the room. The one who acted just a bit too friendly. At first, I thought nothing of it. I trusted my wife. I trusted her circle. I thought that if anyone was safe, it was the people we kept close. But I was wrong. So very wrong. It all started off as something ordinary. My wife and I had been married for over 5 years. Things weren't perfect, but we had a rhythm: work, dinner, occasional movie nights. You know, the usual. Her best friend, Sarah, had been around even before we got married. They were like sisters, inseparable. She was always around for birthdays, holidays, and casual weekend hangouts. I never paid much attention to her presence. She was just part of the background of our life. Then things slowly began to change, almost without me noticing. Sarah started texting me more, often under the excuse of planning surprises for my wife or needing help with something quick. At first, it seemed harmless. My wife even encouraged me to help her out, saying Sarah was going through a rough patch and needed support. I tried to be kind. I thought I was just doing the right thing. But lines blurred, and I didn't realize how far things had gone until it was too late. There was one night in particular that still plays in my mind like a broken record. My wife was out of town for a work trip, and Sarah asked if she could swing by to drop off something for her. I didn't think much of it. We talked for a bit, laughed like friends do, and then, she said something that caught me completely off guard. Something I wasn't prepared to hear, something that made me question everything I thought I knew about trust, loyalty, and the people closest to us. What happened after that turned my entire world upside down. My marriage, my friendships, my peace of mind, it all began to unravel. And the worst part? I couldn't even figure out how I ended up in the middle of it. Was I too trusting? Too blind? Or was there something deeper going on all along? This is not just a story about infidelity. It's a story about betrayal that hides in plain sight. It's about the silent cracks in a relationship that grow when no one's paying attention. And it's about the kind of emotional storm that doesn't just break your heart, it changes the way you see the world. Stick around, because what happened next will leave you speechless. I thought I had seen the worst of it that night, but the truth had just started to reveal itself. And when it finally did, it shattered everything I thought was safe. After that night, something shifted in me. I couldn't shake off what Sarah had said. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she looked at me, the way her tone changed, the sudden closeness in her voice. She wasn't just being friendly anymore. There was something else behind her eyes, something I had never noticed before, or maybe I had, but ignored. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't know how to. What would I even say? Hey, your best friend said something strange to me while you were gone. It sounded like a stretch, like I was overthinking. And I didn't want to come off as paranoid or cause unnecessary drama. So, I kept it to myself. But keeping it inside only made things worse. Over the next few weeks, Sarah started showing up more often. She always had an excuse. I just dropped by to see how you're doing, or I made too much food and thought I'd bring you some. At first, I told myself she was just being thoughtful. But it didn't feel right. It felt calculated. My wife didn't seem to notice. If anything, she seemed happy that her friend was being so supportive. I was stuck in this strange space, pretending everything was fine while my gut told me otherwise. There were little things that began to pile up. Sarah would ask questions about my relationship with my wife, subtle things like, "Do you guys still go on date nights?" Or "She must be tired a lot with work, right?" It felt like she was fishing for something. Testing the waters. And all the while, I kept playing along, acting like I didn't notice. But I noticed everything. The glances. The small touches. The lingering moments that were never there before. The worst part was, I started questioning myself. Had I done something to lead her on without meaning to? Was I imagining all of this? Or was I just scared to admit that someone I trusted might be crossing a line? I began to feel distant from my own home. The place that used to feel safe and comfortable now felt tense and confusing. I'd lie awake at night wondering what was going on behind the scenes, what Sarah's real intentions were. And deep down, I feared that maybe my wife wasn't as clueless as she seemed. There was something brewing beneath the surface. Something that would soon come to light. I just didn't know how much it would cost me. I started noticing things that didn't make sense. Late-night calls my wife would quickly silence. Unexplained weekends when she said she was with Sarah, but then Sarah would show up at our place like she had no idea. I kept trying to convince myself that I was just being paranoid, but the pieces weren't fitting together anymore. Something was off, and it wasn't just Sarah's behavior. It was my wife too. One evening, I got home earlier than usual. The lights were off, but I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. Quiet, low voices. I froze. As I stepped closer, I realized it was Sarah and my wife, talking like they were hiding something. When they noticed me, they both suddenly went silent. My wife smiled too quickly, like she was trying to erase whatever I might have overheard. "We were just catching up," she said. I nodded, pretending to believe her. But inside, a storm was building. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just caught in something awkward, I was in the middle of something much bigger. From that day on, every interaction with them felt like a performance. I didn't know who was acting more, me, trying to stay calm while my mind raced, or them, pretending everything was normal. I started paying closer attention. Watching how they talked to each other. The shared glances. The sudden silences when I entered a room. My own home had turned into a place of suspicion and quiet unease. At the same time, my friend Marcus, someone I trusted completely, noticed I wasn't myself. I finally broke and told him bits and pieces. He didn't say much at first, but the next time we met, he told me something that sent chills down my spine. "Man, I saw your wife with Sarah last week. They weren't acting like just friends." That sentence echoed in my head. I didn't know what to think. What did he mean? What had he really seen? And why hadn't I seen it myself? The conflict wasn't just about what Sarah might have done anymore. It was deeper. It was about my marriage, about trust, and about how blind I'd been. There were too many secrets, and every day it felt like I was getting closer to a truth I wasn't ready to face. But it was there, waiting, just out of reach. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The lies, the half-truths, the gut feelings that kept me up at night, they all pointed in one direction. Something was happening behind my back, and both my wife and Sarah were at the center of it. The tension in the house was unbearable. We barely spoke like we used to. Conversations felt forced, like we were all playing a game we hadn't agreed to. Every look, every silence, felt loaded with things unsaid. One weekend, my wife said she had to travel for work again. Another conference, she called it. By then, I had stopped believing in her business trips. I didn't question her, though, I just nodded and watched her pack. I had a plan. I needed answers, and I was finally ready to get them. The night she left, I drove to Marcus's place. He had a cousin who worked part-time as a rideshare driver and sometimes handled private gigs. I asked him to follow Sarah for a couple of days. Nothing illegal, just eyes on her. I wanted to know where she went, who she met, and what she was hiding. I wasn't proud of it, but I felt like I was drowning and this was my last shot at staying afloat. 2 days later, Marcus called me. His voice was low, serious. "Bro, you need to see this yourself." He sent me photos. Time-stamped. Location tagged. And there it was, Sarah, standing outside a hotel. She wasn't alone. My wife was with her. They weren't attending any conference. They were both smiling, arms linked, heading inside like it was something they did all the time. That image, just the two of them, hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just betrayal. It was confusion, disbelief, and 100 questions I couldn't answer. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the photos over and over. I tried to replay every moment, every conversation, trying to figure out what I missed. Had they been planning this for months? Years? What did it all mean? Why didn't they just tell me the truth? As I sat there, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I got up slowly, heart racing, hands shaking, and when I opened the door, what I saw left me completely speechless. Everything I thought I knew was about to be tested. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. It was Sarah at the door. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood my wife, eyes puffy, face pale, lips tight like she had been crying or maybe just bracing for something heavy. My stomach dropped. I had imagined 1,000 ways this moment could play out, but I wasn't ready for both of them to show up unannounced. I stepped aside wordlessly, and they walked in, the air thick with silence and unspoken tension. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. My wife sat down on the edge of the couch, nervously fiddling with her sleeves. Sarah remained standing, arms folded, her expression unreadable. Then, my wife finally broke the silence. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and shaky. I nodded, unsure what I even wanted to hear. I had prepared myself for confessions, maybe even denials. But what she said next flipped everything I thought I knew upside down. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she began. "At first, it was just emotional. We both needed support, someone to talk to. Things between us were complicated before this even started. You felt it too." I didn't respond. She wasn't wrong, our marriage had been distant for a while, but hearing her say it out loud, with Sarah standing right there, felt like someone ripping open a wound I'd been pretending didn't exist. Then came the twist. Sarah stepped forward and said something that stopped everything cold. "There's something else you don't know. This isn't just about me and her. It's about someone else too." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "A few months ago. I met someone. And it's not your wife." Now I was completely thrown off. My wife turned to her, confused. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" That's when Sarah dropped the second bomb. "I've been seeing Marcus." My head snapped up. "What?" "I didn't plan it," she said quickly. "It just happened. After that night I came over and we talked. I ran into him a few times. One thing led to another, and now it's something more. It felt like the ground beneath me was giving way. Marcus, my closest friend. The one I had gone to for help. The one I trusted with everything. Now, somehow, he was tangled in this mess too." I looked at both of them, my wife, who had betrayed me emotionally if not more, and Sarah, who had been weaving secrets behind both our backs. And Marcus, my friend, was part of it too? The betrayal wasn't just coming from one direction, it was surrounding me. I felt like I was trapped in someone else's story, watching pieces fall apart one by one. This wasn't just a story about infidelity anymore. It had grown into a web of secrets, lies, and double lives, each thread pulling tighter around me. And I still didn't know the full truth. But I was about to find out. I sat down, still trying to process what Sarah had just said. My mind was spinning. My wife was involved with Sarah. Sarah was involved with Marcus. And somehow, I was at the center of all of it, completely in the dark until now. The room was quiet, but the silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, loaded with confusion and betrayal. I looked at my wife, then at Sarah, waiting for someone to make it all make sense. My wife finally spoke again, this time with more clarity. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I was lonely. We both were. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. And Sarah, she was there when I needed someone. But it wasn't love. It wasn't real. Her voice cracked at the end, but I couldn't tell if it was regret or guilt. I asked the only question I could think of. Why didn't you just tell me? Either of you? Neither of them answered right away. Then Sarah looked straight at me. Because I didn't know how to without destroying everything. I know I crossed lines. With both of you. But there's something else. Marcus, he knew everything before you did. That hit harder than anything else so far. What do you mean he knew? He found out a while ago. About me and your wife. He saw us once, and instead of coming to you, he used it. Said he'd keep quiet if I stayed close to him. It started as blackmail, but he twisted it into something else. I felt sick. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me, he had used the entire situation to his advantage, turning everyone's secrets into leverage. And I had trusted him. I had asked him for help, and all along, he was manipulating everything behind the scenes. I stood up. I needed air. I needed space. But then my wife handed me something, a folded letter. He left this in our mailbox this morning. I didn't know what it meant until now. I opened it. Inside was a short note, written in Marcus's handwriting. If you're reading this, then everything came out faster than I expected. I never meant to hurt you. But sometimes the truth is only useful when it stays hidden. I'm leaving town. Don't come looking for me. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just an ending. The shock of it all came crashing down in that moment. I wasn't just betrayed by my wife. I was betrayed by my best friend. And Sarah, caught between both, had been a part of it all from the start. But as I looked at the two women in front of me, one ashamed, one silent, I realized something even more unexpected. The twist wasn't just what they had done. It was what I had learned about myself. I had lost trust, but found clarity. And that changed everything. After Marcus disappeared, the house felt quieter than ever. Not just because of his absence, but because the truth had finally come out, and there was nothing left to guess anymore. My wife and I sat in the living room for hours that night, not yelling, not blaming, just sitting with the reality we had both avoided for far too long. We talked, really talked, for the first time in what felt like years. About how distant we had grown. About how we let silence replace honesty. About how something broken doesn't always need to be thrown away, but it can't be fixed without facing the cracks. Sarah didn't stay long after that night. She apologized before she left, for everything. For crossing lines, for keeping secrets, for playing a role in tearing apart the trust that once held everything together. I didn't have the strength to forgive her right then, but I knew holding on to bitterness wouldn't help either. Some things take time. Some wounds do too. The next few weeks were hard. Every room in the house reminded me of something, some moment, some lie, some quiet warning I hadn't listened to. But I forced myself to keep going. I focused on small routines. Early morning walks. Cooking again. Writing things down just to clear my head. Healing isn't loud. It's slow and often silent. My wife and I decided to take space. Not because we hated each other, but because we both needed time to figure out who we were without the noise of everything that had happened. No shouting. No accusations. Just a quiet agreement that love without truth isn't really love at all. Whether we would come back together wasn't something we needed to decide right away. And that, in a strange way, was comforting. As for Marcus, I never saw him again. He deleted his social media, changed his number, and vanished without a trace. Maybe guilt finally caught up to him. Or maybe he never planned to stay after everything fell apart. I'll probably never know. What I do know is this: betrayal changes you. It shakes the ground beneath your feet, but it also shows you who's really standing with you and who isn't. It teaches you to listen to your instincts, to pay attention to what people say when they think you're not watching, and to never take emotional distance lightly. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just a story about infidelity. It was a story about silence. About everything we don't say that eventually builds up and bursts. About choices. About accountability. And most of all, about learning to face the truth, even when it hurts. Not every story ends with revenge or a perfect reunion. Sometimes the most powerful ending is simply knowing you survived it and walked away stronger. That's what happened to me. And maybe, if you're watching this because you've gone through something similar, that strength is already inside you too. 26.